The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in November. I was in my office, cataloging supplies for the winter ahead. Providence Springs had grown considerably since the railroad came through. We had electric lights now, a proper telegraph office, even a young physician who'd studied back east. At 68, I should have retired years ago, but old doctors, like old soldiers, rarely know when to lay down their arms. The envelope was postmarked from Wyoming. The handwriting was shaky, not from age, I suspected, but from injury or illness. I recognized it immediately, though I hadn't seen it in nearly a decade. Nathan Hawkins was dead. Heart failure, the letter said, died peacefully in his sleep at his ranch outside Laramie. He was only 52 years old. But then again, a man who'd lived the life Nathan had probably earned his rest earlier than most. I sat in my chair, the same worn leather chair I'd occupied for 30 years, and felt the weight of memory settle on my shoulders like Montana snow. Through my window, I could see Main Street bustling with afternoon commerce. Wagons rolling past, children laughing outside the general store, a world Nathan Hawkins had helped make possible. The town he'd saved barely resembled the dusty, frightened place it had been in the spring of 1873. I pulled out my old journal from that year. The leather was cracked now, the pages yellowed and brittle, but the words were still clear, written in the hurried hand of a younger man who thought he understood the world. I'd been 37 when Nathan rode into Providence Springs, young enough to still believe I could save everyone, old enough to know better. That first entry was dated April 15, 1873. Treated a new arrival today. Deep laceration on the forearm. Patient claimed it was a ranching accident. The wound was too clean, too precise. Knife work, not barbed wire. When I cut away his sleeve to clean the injury, I saw something that troubled me. His arms were a map of old violence. Bullet scars, entry and exit wounds, knife marks, defensive patterns on the forearms. The kind of history no simple rancher should carry. He spoke only in whispers, never raised his voice above what a man might use in a library or a church. His eyes never stopped moving, cataloging exits, shadows, potential threats. War veteran, I assumed. God knows we had plenty of those, men still fighting battles that ended at Appomattox. I was wrong about Nathan Hawkins, completely, utterly wrong. He was something far more complicated than a soldier trying to forget. I turned the page. A pressed wildflower fell out, mountain columbine. Its blue petals faded to gray. Rebecca Mitchell had picked it the summer after the Ryder gang fell. She'd been trying to teach Nathan about the peaceful things in life, about beauty that didn't end in blood. They say legends grow in the telling. Facts get buried under myth. Stories become taller with each whiskey-soaked retelling in frontier saloons. But I was there. I saw it all. I treated the wounds, buried the dead, and watched a ghost become a man again. This is what really happened in Providence Springs that year. Not the dime novel version where the ghost of Painted Rock single-handedly destroyed an army. Not the campfire tale about a phantom who couldn't be touched by mortal weapons. This is the truth, as witnessed by the man who tried to heal him. And perhaps, in writing it down, I can finally lay my own ghosts to rest. Providence Springs, Montana Territory, April 1873. The town was like many others sprouting up across the frontier in those years. A dusty main street lined with weather-beaten buildings, false fronts trying to look more prosperous than they were, hope and desperation dancing together in the shadow of the Rockies. Spring came late to our valley that year. Snow still capped the peaks, though the aspens were beginning to bud. Morning mist rose from Crimson Creek like smoke from a campfire. The air was cold and clean, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. I was in my office that April morning, treating a cowhand's broken fingers. The man had gotten them caught in a rope during a difficult calving. Occupational hazard. I was setting the splint when I heard the horse outside, a single rider, leading a pack mule. Through my window I watched him dismount, tall, lean, weathered by sun and wind. He wore a black duster despite the spring chill being mostly past. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face. What caught my attention, what would later make sense, was the revolver worn high on his hip. A Colt Navy, from what I could see, worn with the kind of casual familiarity that spoke of years of use. He tied his horse with an economy of movement, no wasted motion, everything precise and deliberate. When he walked, he moved with a particular grace, not swagger, nothing as obvious as that, more like a big cat, smooth, balanced, ready. Rebecca Mitchell, who ran the general store across the street, told me later that when he'd asked directions to my office, his voice had barely risen above a whisper. She'd had to lean in close to hear him. The intimacy of it had made her uncomfortable, though she couldn't say why. He knocked. 3 precise raps. "Come in," I called, finishing the cowhand splint. The man entered, and I got my first clear look at him. Maybe 40 years old, though hard living can age a man deceptively. Dark hair with silver streaks at the temples, a face that might have been handsome before whatever had hollowed it out. Eyes that never stopped moving, beating, cataloging my office, the windows, the door. Me. Those eyes. Lord, those eyes had seen things. "Got a cut, needs tending," he said. That whisper voice, rough, like he'd damaged his throat somehow, or perhaps like a man who'd spent years trying not to be heard. "Have a seat," I gestured to the examination table. He sat, positioning himself so his back was to the wall, so he could see both the door and the window. I noted that. In my profession, you learn to read the small signs that tell you what a patient won't say. "Let's see it," I said. He began unbuttoning his left sleeve. His hands were steady, calloused. Working hands, yes, but there was something else there, a particular pattern to the calluses. From gripping leather, saddle leather, but also something else. Gun leather, I realized later. The wound ran along his forearm, 5 inches long, clean edges. Recent, perhaps 2 days old. Already showing signs of infection despite crude field dressing. "Ranching accident," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Uh-huh." I began cleaning the wound with carbolic acid. He didn't flinch, not even a twitch. "You're new to Providence Springs." It wasn't a question. "Just arrived," he confirmed. "Looking to settle. Heard the Turner Ranch might be available." "Eleanor Turner's place." "Yes, she's been looking to sell since Thomas passed." I worked carefully, examining the wound. This wasn't barbed wire. He didn't respond. "This was a knife," I continued, my voice neutral, professional. "Clean stroke. Someone knew what they were doing." "Ranching accident," he repeated, softer now, almost apologetic. I decided not to push. A man's past was his own business on the frontier. "I'll need to cut away more of the sleeve to treat this properly." He nodded consent. I took my scissors and began cutting. The fabric fell away, and I stopped. His arm was a canvas of old violence. Bullet scars. I counted 3. Entry wounds, 2 with corresponding exit wounds, 1 bullet still lodged somewhere from the look of the scar tissue. Knife marks, the defensive kind a man gets when he's fighting for his life. Burns, old and puckered. And something else, what looked like a rope burn around his bicep. "That's quite a collection," I said quietly. "War," he said. Just that one word. But I'd treated plenty of war veterans, Confederate and Union both. This wasn't war. This was something else entirely, something more personal, more brutal. I finished cleaning the wound and began stitching. My hands worked automatically while my mind cataloged what I was seeing. This man had survived things that should have killed him, multiple times. "You'll want to keep this clean," I told him. "Change the dressing daily. Come back in a week and I'll check the stitches." Obliged. He reached for his wallet. $2, I said. He paid in cash. New bills, I noticed, not the worn currency most drifters carried. As he rebuttoned his sleeve, I asked, "You got a name, friend?" "Hawkins," he said, standing. "Nathan Hawkins. Dr. Joseph Bennett." I offered my hand. His grip was firm but brief. Those eyes met mine for just a moment, and I saw something there that made me profoundly uneasy. Not threat, exactly. More like emptiness, like looking into a deep well, where something had drowned. "Appreciate your discretion, doctor," he said, moving toward the door. "Professional courtesy," I replied. He paused at the threshold. For a moment, I thought he might say something more, something true. But instead, he simply touched the brim of his hat and left. Through my window, I watched him mount his horse with fluid ease. Despite the fresh stitches, despite the infection, the man moved like pain was an old companion he'd learned to ignore. As he rode toward the edge of town, toward the Turner Ranch, I assumed, I found myself troubled in a way I couldn't quite articulate. I'd been a field surgeon during the war. I'd seen what violence did to men's bodies. I knew the difference between a soldier's scars and something else. Nathan Hawkins's scars told a story of deliberate, sustained violence, not the chaos of battle, not the random cruelty of war. This was precise, targeted, professional. I opened my journal and began to write. Force of habit. I documented all my patients, but this one felt different, important somehow. Patient presence with infected laceration, forearm. Claims ranching accident, clearly fabrication. Extensive scarring suggests prolonged exposure to violence. Combat veteran unlikely. Patterns wrong. Gunfighter, outlaw, lawman? Cannot determine. Patient exhibits signs of significant trauma. Hypervigilance. Controlled affect. Whisper speech pattern, possible throat injury or psychological adaptation. Recommend observation. I paused, pen hovering over the page, then added one final line. This man is dangerous, and he is hiding something. I had no idea that April morning just how dangerous, or just how much he was hiding, or that his arrival would change everything. Over the next few days, Providence Springs buzzed with curiosity about the newcomer. In a town of 300 souls, every stranger was noticed. Every new face became the subject of speculation. Sheriff Caleb Dawson, a veteran lawman with 15 years under his badge, watched Nathan from the shaded porch of his office. I saw them myself, that careful observation. The sheriff's eyes tracking the quiet stranger as he conducted his business. Dawson would later write in his own journal, he showed it to me years after, "There's two kinds of quiet men in this territory. Those who ain't got nothing to say, and those who've seen too much to speak of it. Hawkins struck me as the latter. Something in the way he moves, like a man expecting trouble, like a man who knows exactly what to do when it arrives." Nathan bought supplies from Rebecca Mitchell's store. Always paid cash. Always positioned himself with his back to the wall, eyes on the door. Rebecca told me he was unfailingly polite. Said please and thank you in that whisper voice. But he made her nervous in a way she couldn't quite explain. "It's not that he's rude," she confided to me over coffee one morning. "He's perfectly courteous. But it's like being in a room with a wolf that's chosen not to bite you. You're grateful, but you don't forget what it is." Within the week, Nathan had purchased the Turner Ranch, 500 acres of prime grazing land in the remote corner of Crimson Valley. Eleanor Turner, a widow of 58 who'd been struggling to manage the property alone, sold it to him for a fair price. There was something in his eyes, Eleanor told me, something that made me feel safe about selling to him, like he'd protect the land the way Thomas would have wanted. I found that interesting. Safe. Rebecca felt like she was with a predator. Eleanor felt protected. Two women, two opposite reactions to the same man. I kept watching, kept noting the small details. The way Nathan always kept his colt within reach. The way he scanned the horizon constantly during his infrequent trips to town. The way he positioned his horse for quick departure. The way he never ever sang during Sunday services at the church he attended, sitting in the back pew, but his lips never moved during the hymns. Deputy Frank Rusty Wilson, eager and young at 23, tried to befriend Nathan one afternoon, asked him where he'd learned to handle horses so well. Nathan's response was polite but final. Here and there. Rusty, undeterred by youthful enthusiasm, pushed. "You got family back east? Folks waiting for you somewhere?" Nathan's face went absolutely still. For just a moment I saw something flicker across it. Pain, raw and deep. "No," he whispered. "No family." The way he said it closed the conversation like a door slamming shut. But it was what Rusty told me later that truly concerned me. The deputy had been out early one morning, checking fence lines on the edge of town. He'd heard gunfire from the direction of Nathan's ranch. 6 shots, evenly spaced. Curiosity got the better of caution. Rusty rode closer, staying in the tree line. What he saw made him go pale in the telling. Nathan had set up 6 bottles on a fence post. 60 yards out, Rusty estimated, maybe more. 6 shots, 6 broken bottles. "That's not the part that scared me, Doc," Rusty said, his hands trembling slightly around his coffee cup. "Plenty of men can shoot straight." It was how fast he did it. 6 shots in the time it takes to draw breath. And his face, it was like he wasn't even thinking about it. Like breathing, like killing, was what he was made for. I listened to this with growing unease. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my office looking out at the darkened street. Nathan's ranch was 5 miles out, but I found myself wondering what he was doing out there, whether he slept, whether he could. The scars on his arm kept coming back to me, the particular pattern of them, the bullet wounds that should have killed him, the knife marks that spoke of close, brutal combat, and that emptiness in his eyes, like something essential had been burned out of him. I thought about the war, about the young men I'd tried to save in field hospitals, the ones whose bodies healed but whose spirits didn't, the ones who came back different, hollow. But Nathan wasn't a war veteran. I was certain of that now. He was something else, something Providence Springs wasn't prepared for. I opened my journal to a fresh page and wrote a single question, one that would haunt me in the weeks to come. What is Nathan Hawkins running from? Or perhaps, more importantly, what is he running toward? I had no way of knowing that the answer would arrive within a month, that it would come on horseback, 20 strong, with death in its wake, that Nathan Hawkins hadn't come to Providence Springs seeking peace at all. He'd come here to end a war that had been raging for 8 long years, a war that began in fire and blood at a place called Painted Rock. And the ghosts of that night were riding north, hunting the man who'd been hunting them. The storm was coming to Crimson Valley. We just didn't know it yet. The screaming started 3 nights after Nathan bought the ranch. I was awake. Insomnia has been my companion since the war, reading by lamplight in my quarters above the office. The sound came through the open window, carrying across the night air from somewhere distant. A man's voice, raw with terror. Wordless at first, then fragmenting into something that might have been names. It came from the direction of Nathan's ranch. I stood at my window, looking out into the darkness. 5 miles was too far to see anything, but I knew with absolute certainty what I was hearing. I'd heard it before in field hospitals. In the nights after battles when wounded men relived the horror in their sleep. The cry of a soul trapped in nightmare. It lasted perhaps 2 minutes. Then silence rushed back in, thick and heavy. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote answered with its own howl. The sounds blended together, human anguish and animal cry, until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, Nathan came to town for supplies. I watched him from my window as he tied his horse outside Rebecca's store. He moved normally, no sign of the previous night's torment. But when he turned to scan the street, that constant, vigilant scanning, I saw shadows under his eyes, dark as bruises. I made a decision then, probably overstepping my bounds as his physician, certainly overstepping the unwritten rules of frontier privacy, but I'd made a promise to a dying man once years ago, my mentor, Dr. Marcus Webb, had gripped my hand in a field hospital at Cold Harbor and made me swear, never give up on the ones who think they're beyond healing, Joseph. Sometimes saving a soul is more important than saving a body. I'd honored that promise through the war and after. I wasn't about to stop now. I crossed the street and entered Rebecca's store just as Nathan was examining a bag of coffee beans. "Mr. Hawkins," I said, "how's that arm healing?" He turned, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw wariness in his eyes. Then it smoothed away, replaced by polite neutrality. "Well enough, doctor, stitches are holding." "I'd like to check them anyway. Professional thoroughness." I smiled, keeping my voice light. "Why don't you stop by the office before you head back?" Rebecca was watching us from behind the counter. Her dark eyes moved between us with intelligence that missed nothing. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "After I finish here." "Good. I'll put coffee on." An hour later, he sat in my examination room while I unwrapped the dressing on his arm. The wound was healing cleanly. No infection. The stitches doing their job. "You do good work, doctor," he said softly. "Years of practice." I rewrapped the arm with fresh bandages. Most of it during the war. I was a field surgeon, Union Army. Something flickered across his face. That must have been difficult. It was. I washed my hands in the basin, taking my time, choosing my words carefully. The physical wounds were straightforward. Bullets, shells, sabers. But the other wounds, the ones that didn't show, those were harder to treat. I felt him go still behind me. "I still hear them sometimes," I continued, drying my hands. "The young men crying out in their sleep, reliving Antietam, Gettysburg, the wilderness. The nightmares don't care that the war ended 8 years ago. For some men, it never ends." Silence stretched between us. I turned to face him. His eyes had changed. That emptiness I'd seen before was still there, but now there was something else. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion. "I heard someone last night," I said gently, "screaming, from the direction of your ranch." "Coyotes," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, I know the sound of coyotes. This was a man in considerable pain." He stood, rebuttoning his sleeve. "I should get back." "Nathan." I used his first name deliberately. "I'm not asking you to tell me what happened to you, but if you need something to help you sleep, to quiet the dreams—" "There's nothing that helps," he interrupted. Still that whisper, but now edged with something raw. "I've tried whiskey, laudanum, exhaustion. Nothing works. The dreams come anyway." "What do you dream about?" For a long moment I thought he wouldn't answer. He stood there, hand on the doorknob, back to me. His shoulders were tense, his breathing careful and controlled. "Fire," he finally said. "Smoke. Screaming. Always screaming." "The war?" "No." He opened the door. "Something worse than war. War at least has rules, has reasons. This—" He stopped, shook his head. "Thank you for checking the stitches, doctor." He was gone before I could respond. I stood there in my empty examination room, listening to his horse's hooves fade down the street. Then I went to my journal and wrote, "Patient suffering from severe night terrors, dreams of fire and screaming, refuses treatment. Whatever trauma he experienced, it was profound and personal. Not war. Something else. He carries it like a physical weight. I fear for him, and I fear what might happen if that weight ever becomes too heavy to bear." Sunday came, and with it the weekly service at Providence Springs' modest white church. I attended regularly, more from habit than devotion. The war had complicated my relationship with God. I'd seen too many prayers go unanswered in field hospitals. Too many good men die screaming. But the church was the heart of our community, and I believed in community even if my faith had grown uncertain. Nathan was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back pew. Same position as the previous week. End of the row, easy exit to the door. That constant tactical thinking. Eleanor Turner sat beside him. That surprised me. Eleanor was one of our most respected citizens, a woman of strength and wisdom, widowed 2 years earlier when her husband Thomas died in a ranching accident. She'd kept the ranch running alone until Nathan bought it. Many had wondered why she sold to a stranger rather than to one of the local families who'd made offers. Now, watching her sit beside him with quiet comfort, I began to understand. Eleanor had always had a gift for seeing past surfaces, for recognizing pain in others, perhaps because she carried so much of her own. The service began. We sang Rock of Ages. Nathan didn't sing, his lips didn't move, but I noticed him listening. His eyes closed, his face drawn in something that might have been concentration or might have been pain. When we reached the verse about "other refuge have I none," I saw his jaw clench. After the service, people gathered outside in the spring sunshine. Children played. Women discussed recipes and upcoming socials. Men talked crops and cattle and the possibility of the railroad extending our direction. I found Eleanor and Nathan standing slightly apart. She was speaking softly, and he was actually listening, not just hearing, but genuinely listening. "Dr. Bennett," Eleanor greeted me warmly. "Lovely sermon today, wasn't it?" "Reverend Morrison does have a way with words," I agreed. Then to Nathan, "Settling in well?" "Well enough." Eleanor touched his arm gently. "Nathan's been doing beautiful work on the ranch. Thomas would be pleased to see it in such capable hands." "Eleanor's been generous with her advice," Nathan said, "teaching me about the land." "Thomas used to say the land will tell you what it needs," Eleanor said. "If you listen, Nathan listens." There was something maternal in the way she looked at him, as if she saw past the dangerous stranger everyone else saw and recognized something else. Something wounded and worth protecting. Rebecca Mitchell approached, carrying a basket covered with checkered cloth. She'd been avoiding Nathan since his arrival, I'd noticed, polite but distant whenever he came to her store. "Eleanor," she said, then hesitated. "Mr. Hawkins." "Miss Mitchell." He touched the brim of his hat. An awkward silence stretched. Rebecca shifted the basket from one hand to the other. "I made extra preserves," she finally said, not quite meeting Nathan's eyes. "Strawberry, thought you might—" "Well, if you'd like some." She held out the basket. Inside were 3 jars of deep red preserves, glowing like jewels in the sunlight. Nathan stared at them for a moment. Then, very carefully, he took the basket. His hands were gentle with it, as if he were handling something precious and fragile. "Thank you," he said, and there was something in his voice, gratitude that went deeper than strawberry preserves, gratitude perhaps for a simple human kindness. Rebecca finally met his eyes. Whatever she saw there made her expression soften. "You're welcome to stop by the store any time," she said. "Not just for supplies. If you want conversation or coffee, the door is open." She left quickly after that, but I saw color in her cheeks. Eleanor smiled. "Rebecca's a good woman. Lost her husband 3 years back. Outlaws hit their wagon coming from Billings. John died defending her." Nathan's face went hard. "They catch them?" "No." Eleanor's voice was quiet. "They never did." "I'm sorry," Nathan said. And I believed he truly was. We stood there in the sunshine, 3 people carrying different griefs. For a moment, the church bells ringing felt like absolution. That afternoon, I was inventorying medical supplies when I noticed something odd through my window. A rider had come into town. Not unusual in itself, we got travelers regularly. But this man had an edge to him. Rough clothes, trail-worn. A revolver slung low on his hip. He tied his horse outside the saloon and disappeared inside. An hour later, he emerged, rode straight to Rebecca's store. Curiosity got the better of me. I crossed the street, entering just as the man was examining her inventory with more interest than seemed warranted. "Afternoon," I said pleasantly. He turned, eyes cold and assessing. "Afternoon, Doc." He'd marked my profession from my clothes, apparently. "Passing through?" I asked. "Might be. Might stay a while, depends." He picked up a can of peaches, examined it, set it down. "Heard this was a peaceful town, that true?" "Generally speaking, yes." "No trouble? No outlaws causing problems?" "We have Sheriff Dawson. He keeps things orderly." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Good to know. A man likes to know he can rest easy in a town. No unexpected trouble." Something about the way he said unexpected made my skin crawl. Rebecca had gone very still behind her counter. Her hand, I noticed, had drifted below the counter line, where she kept her shotgun. "Is there something I can help you find?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but I heard the tension underneath. "Just looking, ma'am, just looking." He browsed a few more minutes, bought nothing, and left. After he was gone, Rebecca let out a breath. "That's the third one this week." "Third what?" "Rough man, asking questions, acting like he's sizing the town up." She looked at me, worry clear in her eyes. "Something's not right, Dr. Bennett. I can feel it." I thought about that. Thought about Nathan arriving a month ago. Thought about his scars, his nightmares, his constant vigilance. Thought about Rebecca's late husband, killed by outlaws. "Keep your shotgun close," I said quietly, "and if you see anything that concerns you, tell Sheriff Dawson immediately." That evening, I rode out to Nathan's ranch. I told myself it was to check on his healing, professional diligence. But truthfully, I needed to see him. Needed to ask questions I probably had no right to ask. The ranch sat in a beautiful spot, high ground overlooking the valley. The house was 2 stories, solidly built. Thomas Turner had known what he was doing when he chose this location. What struck me, though, were the modifications Nathan had already made. The fence lines had been repaired, yes, but in specific places that would funnel approaching riders into particular paths. The barn had new shooting ports cut into it, disguised as ventilation, but I knew better. The corrals had been repositioned to provide cover. This wasn't a man settling into peaceful ranching. This was a man preparing for a siege. Nathan was on the porch when I arrived, cleaning his Colt. He looked up, unsurprised by my visit. "Doctor, something wrong?" I dismounted, tied my horse. "May I speak frankly with you?" Always appreciated frank speaking. I climbed the porch steps. Stood there looking out at the same view he'd been studying. You could see every approach to town from here, every road, every trail. "You didn't choose this place for the grazing land," I said. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "No. You chose it for the tactical advantage." "Yes." "Because you're expecting trouble." He set down the cloth he'd been using to clean his gun, looked at me with those haunted eyes. "Doctor, you seem like a good man. This is a good town, good people. I'd prefer they didn't get caught up in my business." "What business is that?" "The kind that ends in blood," he said simply. "The kind I've been trying to leave behind for 8 years. But blood has a way of following a man, of finding him, no matter how far he runs. These men in town, the rough ones asking questions, they're looking for you. They're looking for someone. Whether they know it's me yet, I can't say." He picked up his gun, checked the cylinder with practiced ease. "But they'll figure it out soon enough. They always do." "Who are they?" He smiled, but it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "Ghosts, Doctor, same as me. We're all ghosts, haunting each other across the territories." "Nathan, you should go," he interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "This isn't your fight. It never was. I chose this place because I can defend it, because when they come, and they will come, I can end it here, away from the town, away from people like Eleanor and Rebecca and that young deputy." "You're planning to face them alone?" "I've always been alone." I looked at him then, really looked. Saw the exhaustion, the resignation, the way a man looks when he's already written his own ending. "You know what I learned in the war," I said quietly. "I learned that the men who survived weren't always the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who had something to live for, something beyond the fight. The ones who gave up, who decided they were already dead, they died. Every time." "I died 8 years ago," Nathan whispered. "Everything since has just been the ghost walking around." "That's not true, isn't it?" He met my eyes. "Tell me, Doctor, when you heard me screaming in the night, what did you hear? A living man, or something that should have died but forgot how?" I had no answer for that. A coyote howled in the distance. The sun was setting, painting the mountains blood red. The same color, I imagined, as the fire Nathan dreamed about. "There was a place called Painted Rock," he said suddenly. "New Mexico Territory, 1865, small town, Marshall's Station. I was deputy there, had a wife, a daughter. My breath caught. I was out tracking a horse thief, supposed to be gone 3 days, took 4. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. The only way, I suspected, he could tell this story. When I came back over the ridge, I saw smoke. Black smoke against blue sky. The town, it wasn't there anymore, just ashes, bodies. Nathan, my daughter was 5 years old. Her name was Emma. She liked butterflies. He laughed, a terrible sound. Isn't that strange? The things you remember. She loved butterflies. And my wife Sarah, she sang while she cooked, hymns mostly. She had a beautiful voice. I'm so sorry. They were in the house when it burned. The Marshall's family, too. Everyone. 23 people died that day. Men who did it were a gang out of Kansas. 27 of them, best we could figure. 27. The number hit me like a physical blow. I spent 2 years hunting them, Nathan continued, across 5 territories. Found them one by one. Some resisted, some begged. Made no difference in the end. 27 men, 27 graves. Jesus, I whispered. They called me Ghost, said I appeared out of nowhere, vanished the same way. Truth was simpler. I just stopped caring whether I lived or died. Makes a man dangerous, that kind of freedom. And these men coming now? One of them was there, he said, at Painted Rock. I never found him. He was smarter than the others, hid better. But I've been tracking him for 8 years. His name is Mason Ryder, and his brothers are bringing their gang north into Montana territory. You knew they were coming here. I chose Providence Springs because it was in their path, because I could prepare, because I'm tired of running, and it's time to end it. He looked at me. That's why I bought this ranch, Doctor. Not for peace, for war, and I'm sorry your town got caught in the middle. But this is where it ends, one way or another. The sun slipped behind the mountains, and darkness rushed in to fill the valley. I rode back to town in that darkness, my mind reeling. Nathan Hawkins wasn't running from his past. He was preparing to face it. And Providence Springs was about to become a battlefield. I didn't sleep that night either. At 3 a.m, I sat at my desk and wrote in my journal. His name was Nathan Hunter. He had a family once, a life. Then fire took everything, and he became something else. Something colder, more dangerous. He killed 27 men in 2 years, became a legend, the ghost of Painted Rock. Now the ghost has come to my town to die, or to finally live. I'm not sure which. Doctor. Webb, you told me never to give up on souls beyond saving. But how do you save a man who doesn't want to be saved? How do you heal a ghost? I don't know if I can, but I have to try. Because if I don't, Nathan Hawkins will face his demons alone. And I've seen enough death to know what happens to men who fight alone. They lose every time. Outside my window, a rider passed through town in the darkness, heading north, toward the Ryder Gang's territory. The storm was coming, and all we could do was wait. The riders came on a Tuesday morning in early May. 20 of them, riding in formation. Not the loose scatter of travelers or the casual approach of cowboys drifting between ranches. This was military precision, organized, purposeful. I was in my office when Deputy Wilson burst through the door, his young face pale. "Doc, you need to see this." I followed him to the street. Half the town had already gathered, watching the column of horsemen approach down Main Street. The sound of their hooves was like thunder, like the drums of war. Sheriff Dawson stood on his porch, hand resting on his gun. But even from across the street I could see the calculation in his eyes. One sheriff, one green deputy, against 20 armed men. The mathematics of violence were clear. The leader rode a black stallion, silver spurs catching the morning light. Tall, commanding presence. Handsome in a cold way, like a knife blade. He surveyed our town with the eyes of a man appraising property he intended to own. Behind him rode a younger man, drunk already, from the way he swayed in his saddle. And beside the leader, a third man. This one different, quieter, watching everything with intelligence that made my skin crawl. The quiet one's left eye twitched, just slightly, a nervous tell. They dismounted outside the saloon, not asking permission, not acknowledging the sheriff. Simply claiming space like it belonged to them. "Who are they?" Rusty whispered beside me. I didn't answer, but I knew. Somehow, I knew. The Ryder gang had arrived. Within an hour, their presence infected the town like a disease. The drunk one, Wade Ryder, I later learned, started a fight in the saloon, broke a chair over a cowhand's back for looking at him wrong. The cowhand wisely didn't fight back. The intelligent one, Mason Ryder, visited each business on Main Street, polite, smiling, making what he called friendly suggestions about protection payments. His quiet voice somehow made the threats more menacing than if he'd shouted them. And the leader, Cole Ryder himself, sat outside the saloon like a king holding court, watching, calculating, letting his brothers do the dirty work while he orchestrated from above. I treated 3 injuries that morning, all from accidents: a broken nose, cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder. The men wouldn't say what happened, wouldn't meet my eyes. Fear had come to Providence Springs. By noon, Rebecca was standing in my office, her hands shaking with barely controlled fury. "They came to my store," she said, 2 of them, started helping themselves to inventory, said Cole Ryder wanted to discuss business arrangements. When I told them to leave, they laughed. "Did they hurt you?" "No, because," she paused, "because Nathan was there." My pulse quickened. What happened? Nothing. That's what was strange. He just stood in the doorway, didn't draw his gun, didn't say much, but something about him made them leave. She looked at me, fear and confusion warring in her eyes. "Dr. Bennett, what is he? Those men are killers. I could see it in them. But they were afraid of Nathan. Actually afraid." Before I could answer, the door opened. An older man entered, weathered face, gray beard, walking with a cane, but his eyes were sharp, taking in everything with a lawman's practiced assessment. "Dr. Bennett," he said. "Name's Samuel McAllister, retired U.S. Marshal. I'm looking for Sheriff Dawson, but I need medical attention first. Old wound acting up in this weather. Of course. Miss Mitchell, we'll talk later." Rebecca left, casting a curious glance at the newcomer. I examined McAllister's leg. Old bullet wound, arthritis settling in around the scar tissue. As I worked, we talked. He'd been tracking outlaws for 30 years before retiring, knew every gang, every wanted man between here and Texas. "The Ryder gang," he said grimly. "Been a plague for 5 years, bank robberies, murder, burned a homestead in the Dakotas last year, killed the whole family, even the children." My hand stilled. "Children." "They're here now," I said quietly. "I know. Tracked them north from Wyoming. Came to warn your sheriff." He paused. "But there's something else. On my way into town I saw a man, tall, dark hair, black duster, riding a gray horse. Nathan Hawkins. He bought the Turner Ranch." McAllister's reaction was immediate. The color drained from his face. His hand, holding his cane, began to tremble. "Lord Almighty," he breathed. "I thought he was dead." "You know him?" "Know him? McAllister stood abruptly, testing his leg. "I need to see the sheriff, now. And you should come too, Doctor. What I have to say concerns the whole town." In Sheriff Dawson's office, with the door closed and curtains drawn, Samuel McAllister told us a story that changed everything. "That man you call Nathan Hawkins," he began. "His real name is Nathan Hunter. 8 years ago he was a deputy in Painted Rock, New Mexico Territory." The name hit me like a physical blow. Painted Rock, where Nathan's family had died. "There was a massacre," McAllister continued. "Gang hit the town, burned it to the ground. Killed 23 people, including the marshal and his family. Only survivor was a young deputy who'd been out on patrol." "Nathan?" I whispered. "He spent the next 2 years hunting every man responsible. 27 kills, all of them clean. Professional. They called him Ghost because he'd appear out of nowhere, strike and vanish. No witnesses, no mercy. Just cold, precise justice." Sheriff Dawson leaned back in his chair, processing this. "And the Ryder gang? That's the thing." McAllister's voice dropped. "I never connected it before, but the Painted Rock Massacre, word was it was a revenge killing, some gang from Kansas avenging a cousin the marshal had killed. But the gang scattered after went their separate ways. Most of them died. Some became the Ryder gang. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. Mason Ryder was there, I said. At Painted Rock. Nathan told me. Both men stared at me. He's been tracking them for 8 years, I continued. That's why he came to Providence Springs, not to escape, to intercept them, to end it. Good God, Dawson breathed. He's using himself as bait. And our town as the battlefield, McAllister added grimly. We sat in heavy silence. Outside we could hear the Ryder gang's laughter from the saloon. Inside we were learning that our quiet, wounded rancher was actually a legendary killer who'd brought his war to our doorstep. There's more, McAllister said quietly. After the 27 kills, Hunter didn't stop. He found other men like him, lawmen who'd lost everything. They called themselves the Judgment Riders, operated outside the law. Vigilantes, if you want to be honest about it. Vigilantes? Dawson's voice was sharp. They only hunted killers, men the law couldn't or wouldn't touch, but they didn't bring them to trial. They just ended them. McAllister met my eyes. Nathan Hunter became something during those years. Something more than human, something less than merciful. The ghost of Painted Rock wasn't just a man, it was death itself, hunting the wicked. And now he's here, Dawson said, in my town, with the Ryder gang. The question is, McAllister said slowly, do we help him, or do we try to stop him before this becomes a bloodbath? Before anyone could answer, gunfire erupted outside. We burst onto the street to find chaos. 2 of Ryder's men were firing guns into the air, whooping with drunken laughter. Townspeople scattered, children screamed. A woman fell trying to run, and no one stopped to help her, too afraid. Wade Ryder stumbled out of the saloon, adding his own shots to the mayhem. Sheriff Dawson drew his gun. That's enough. Wade turned, swaying. Focused on the sheriff with bleary, malicious eyes. Or what, old man? You gonna arrest me? If necessary. Cole Ryder emerged from the saloon, calm, controlled. He placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. Now, Sheriff, no need for unpleasantness. Boys are just letting off steam. No harm done. 3 counts of disturbing the peace, public intoxication, reckless endangerment. Cole smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Those are serious charges. You sure you want to press them? Against all my men? The threat was clear. Dawson had 1 deputy. The Ryders had 20 guns. The law, Dawson began. The law is a long way from here, Cole interrupted. But we're right here, right now, and we're not going anywhere. The standoff hung there, balanced on a knife's edge. Then a quiet voice cut through the tension. Actually, you are. Everyone turned. Nathan stood at the end of the street, black duster catching the wind, hand resting casually near his gun, that whisper voice somehow carrying to every ear. This town doesn't need your business, Nathan continued, walking slowly forward. You've got 2 days to move on. Find somewhere else. Wade laughed. Who the hell are you? But Mason Ryder had gone very still, that eye twitching faster now. He was staring at Nathan with something that looked like recognition and fear. Cole, Mason said quietly, we should go. Why? Cole's eyes never left Nathan. Because some rancher told us to? Because that's not a rancher, Mason whispered. Nathan was close enough now that I could see his face, calm, almost peaceful, like a man who'd already accepted what was coming and found relief in certainty. The family in the Dakotas, Nathan said, still in that whisper. The one you burned. You shot the children first, made the parents watch. That was you, wasn't it? Cole's smile faded. Careful, friend, you're making accusations. Not accusations, facts. I've been following your trail for months. Dodge City, Fort Collins, that business in Cheyenne, I know what you are, what you've done. And what are you? Cole asked. Some self-appointed judge? No, Nathan replied, just the consequence of your choices. The street had gone silent, everyone watching, waiting for the violence to begin. But it was Mason who spoke, his voice cracking. Cole, we need to leave now. Why? Cole demanded, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Mason's eye was twitching so hard it looked painful. Because I know him. I've seen his work before. That's the ghost." The words fell like stones into still water, ripples of shock spreading through the crowd. "The ghost of Painted Rock?" Wade laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's just a story. Old campfire tale." "No," McAllister said, stepping forward from the sheriff's office. "It's not. I'm Samuel McAllister. I was a U.S. Marshal for 30 years. I saw what the ghost did. Bodies left across 5 territories. 27 men, all dead. All deserved it. And standing right there is Nathan Hunter, the ghost himself." The revelation crashed over the town like a wave. I watched faces change, Rebecca's hand going to her mouth, Eleanor's eyes widening, Rusty stepping back involuntarily. The townspeople who'd been warming to Nathan now seeing him differently, seeing the killer beneath the quiet rancher. Cole Ryder recovered first. "So, the legend lives. That's supposed to scare me?" "It should," Nathan said simply. 2 days. After that, I stop being polite. "And if we don't leave?" "Then I add you to my ghosts." The way Nathan said it, not threatening, just stating a fact, made even Cole hesitate. Mason grabbed his brother's arm. "Cole, please. I've seen what he does. We need more men, better planning. We can't—" "We're not running from one man," Cole snarled, but he was already backing toward his horse. "Come on. We'll discuss this at camp." The Ryder gang mounted up, but as they left, Cole turned back. 2 days, Ghost. Then we'll see how legends die." They rode out, leaving Providence Springs in shocked silence. Nathan stood in the middle of the street, alone. People giving him space now, looking at him differently. Rebecca was the first to approach. "Is it true, all of it?" "Yes." "You killed 27 men?" "Yes." "And you came here knowing they'd follow?" Nathan met her eyes. "I came here to end it, to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. To make sure what happened to my family, to your husband, doesn't happen again." "By bringing them to us?" Fear and anger fought in her voice. "By making our town your battlefield?" "By ending them where I could control the terrain, where I could protect you." His voice was rough with emotion. "I chose this place because from my ranch I can see every approach, because I could prepare, because I'm tired of running and it's time to finish this." Eleanor pushed through the crowd, placed herself between Nathan and the growing hostility. "And what would you have him do?" she demanded of the gathered townspeople. "Run? Let the Ryder gang operate freely. They were coming north anyway. At least now we have warning. We have someone who knows how to fight them." "We have a killer," someone shouted. "A vigilante who took the law into his own hands." "I have," Nathan said quietly, "and I'm not proud of what I became. Those 2 years, hunting them, I crossed lines. Became something cold, something barely human. That's why I tried to stop, to find peace. But Mason Ryder was at Painted Rock. He was there when my wife died, when my daughter burned. And I can't let him keep killing, can't let him destroy more families." The crowd was silent now, wrestling with the revelation. Sheriff Dawson stepped forward. "This is still my town, my jurisdiction, and I don't condone vigilante justice. I know, but—" Dawson looked at the road where the Ryders had departed. "The Ryder gang has killed dozens, burned homes, left children orphaned, and the law hasn't stopped them. Maybe it's time the law got help from someone who can." "You'd sanction this?" someone asked. "I'd acknowledge reality," Dawson replied. 20 men against 1 sheriff and a green deputy? We'd lose. Ryder would take this town apart. But the ghost of Painted Rock? He looked at Nathan. He's the only chance we have. That evening, I found myself at Eleanor's house for an impromptu meeting. Nathan was there, Rebecca, Sheriff Dawson, McAllister. Eleanor herself, serving coffee with steady hands despite the day's revelations. "They'll come back," Nathan said, "with more men. Cole's pride won't let him run from one person, even knowing who I am." "How many?" Dawson asked. 30, maybe 40. Every gun he can hire. 40 against 1. "Not one," McAllister interjected. "I sent telegrams before I came here, to some old friends, men who rode with Nathan during the Judgment Riders' days. If they're alive, if they're close enough, they'll come." "More vigilantes," someone muttered. No, Nathan said quietly. Men who saw the law fail, who lost everything to outlaws the courts couldn't touch. They're not perfect. Neither am I. But we're all that's standing between this town and what Cole Ryder will do to it. Rebecca set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. I need to know something. The newspaper clipping. The one from February tracking the Ryder gang north. That was in your saddlebag. I saw it when I brought you supplies during your nightmare. Nathan closed his eyes. Yes. So you knew they were coming here. You chose Providence Springs deliberately. Yes. Everything. The quiet rancher. The peaceful settling. It was all preparation for war. Not all of it, Nathan said, opening his eyes, looking directly at her. At first, yes. This was just a battlefield, a place with good terrain and innocent people to evacuate if needed. But then I met Eleanor, and you, and Dr. Bennett. And this stopped being just a place. It became, he struggled for words, it became worth protecting, worth fighting for, not just to end my war, but because it's a good town, good people, and you deserve to live without fear. Eleanor touched his shoulder gently. My Thomas used to say that a man's intentions matter less than his actions. You came here to fight. But you also fixed fences, attended church, accepted kindness. You let yourself become part of something. That's not a lie, Nathan. That's healing. Is it? His voice cracked. Even if that healing comes at the cost of violence? Sometimes, I said quietly, healing requires lancing an infection, cutting away disease. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary. I met his eyes. Doctor, Webb told me never to give up on souls beyond saving. I don't think you're beyond saving, Nathan. I think you're a man who became a monster to fight monsters. And now, you're trying to be a man again. Nathan stood abruptly, walking to the window, looking out at the darkness. They'll attack my ranch first, he said. Try to kill me before I'm ready. Probably tonight. Maybe tomorrow night. Then we prepare, Dawson said. Set up defenses. Get the townspeople ready. No, Nathan turned. The town stays out of it. This is my fight. I won't risk civilians. Too late for that, Rebecca said firmly. They've already threatened my store, already scared our children. This became our fight the moment they rode in. She's right, Eleanor agreed. We're not helpless, Nathan. We can learn. We can defend ourselves. Nathan looked at each of us in turn, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this smart. Defensive positions. Evacuation plans. No one takes unnecessary risks. Agreed, Dawson said. We spent the next hour planning, preparing for the storm we knew was coming. As the meeting broke up, I walked Nathan to his horse. The nightmares, I said. Are they worse now, knowing the end is near? No, he said softly. Actually, they're quieter, like the ghosts know I'm finally facing them, finally finishing what they started. And after, if you survive? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know, never planned past this, never thought I'd... He looked back at Eleanor's warm, lighted windows. Never thought I'd have a reason to. Find one, I said. Find a reason to live instead of just a reason to fight. He rode off into the darkness, toward his ranch, toward whatever the night would bring. I stood there on Eleanor's porch, watching him go, and I thought about Dr. Webb's promise, about saving souls beyond saving. Nathan Hunter had been dead for 8 years, but maybe, just maybe, Nathan Hawkins could learn to live. If we could all survive what was coming. The war for Providence Springs was about to begin, and I prayed we'd all see the other side of it. They came in the darkness 3 nights later. I was awake when the gunfire started. Distant thunder from the direction of Nathan's ranch. I dressed quickly, grabbed my medical bag and ran to the sheriff's office. Dawson was already there watching the horizon, flashes of light in the darkness. The sound of battle carried on the night wind. It started, he said simply. By dawn they began bringing in the wounded. Not townspeople. Ryder's men, 4 of them, unconscious, bound hand and foot, tied across their horses, each with precise injuries, dislocated shoulders, cracked ribs, carefully placed blows that incapacitated without killing. Professional violence. A note was pinned to the first man's shirt. Send better men or come yourself. Nathan's work. I treated them in my office while Sheriff Dawson stood guard. As I worked, they told fragmented stories of a phantom in the darkness, of whispers that seemed to come from everywhere, of never seeing him until it was too late. "He's not human," one muttered through swollen lips. "Bullets pass right through him." "He's very human," I corrected, stitching a gash. "Just better prepared than you were." By mid-morning, Cole Ryder's response arrived. More men, professionals this time. Quick-draw McGrath with his ivory-handled Colts. Santiago Vega, a Mexican gunfighter with a reputation for speed. The Thompson brothers from Colorado. 30 hired guns, all told, flooding into Providence Springs. The saloon couldn't hold them all. They spilled into the streets, into empty buildings, claiming our town like an occupying army, and Cole Ryder sat in the center of it all, smiling that cold smile. "Tell the ghost," he announced to Sheriff Dawson, "that if he wants to save his precious town, he needs to come face me like a man. No more shadows, no more ghost tricks, just him and me." "You know he won't do that," Dawson replied. "Then I'll burn this town the same way Painted Rock burned, building by building, family by family, until he comes out." The threat hung in the air like smoke. That afternoon, Nathan rode into town, in broad daylight, down Main Street, making no attempt to hide. The Ryder men tensed, hands drifting toward guns, but Nathan's hand stayed visible, away from his Colt. He rode straight to the saloon and dismounted. Cole emerged, flanked by his brothers. The street cleared, people watching from windows, from doorways. Everyone sensing what was coming. "Brave of you," Cole said. "Or stupid." "Neither," Nathan replied in his whisper. "Just tired of games." "Then let's end this, you and me, right here." "No," Cole's smile faded. "No? You want to fight, Cole? You'll get one. But not here, not where innocent people can be caught in the crossfire." Nathan gestured toward the mountains. "My ranch. Tomorrow at dawn. Bring all your men. I'll be waiting." "That's suicide." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm giving you one last chance to walk away, to leave Montana and never come back. Because if you come to my ranch tomorrow, I promise you, not all of you will leave." Mason Ryder stepped forward, his eye twitching violently. "Cole, don't. It's a trap. Has to be." "Of course it's a trap," Cole laughed. "He's inviting us to kill him on ground he's prepared. But pride's a funny thing, Mason. Can't let a legend think he's scared us off. This isn't about pride." "Everything's about pride." Cole turned back to Nathan. "Dawn tomorrow. We'll come. And when it's done, your ghost story ends. Permanently." Nathan nodded once, mounted his horse. As he turned to leave, his eyes found mine across the street. In them, I saw something that chilled me. Acceptance. Like a man who'd already written his ending. He rode away, and the town exhaled. That evening, Eleanor's house became a war council again. But this time, there were new faces. 3 riders had arrived an hour before sunset, hard men with harder eyes. They stood when Nathan entered, and I saw something pass between them. Recognition, brotherhood, grief. "Marshal Kane," the eldest said, gripping Nathan's hand. "Been a long time." "Too long," Nathan replied. "This is the Apache Kid," Kane gestured to a lean native warrior. "And Thompson. We got McAllister's message. Came as fast as we could." The Judgment Riders. The men who'd hunted with Nathan after Painted Rock. Men who'd crossed the same dark lines he had. 3 isn't much against 30, Dawson observed. "No," Kane agreed. "But we've fought worse odds. And Nathan's still the best tactical mind I've ever seen." They spent hours planning, positioning, preparing. I listened, my medical mind cataloging potential injuries, calculating survival rates. The numbers weren't good. Rebecca brought coffee, her hand steady now, despite the fear in her eyes. When she handed Nathan his cup, their fingers touched briefly. "Promise me something," she said quietly, "if I can. Promise you'll try to survive this. Not just fight. Actually try to come back." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, then, "I promise." It was the first time I'd heard him commit to living instead of just dying well. Dawn came with fog, thick mountain fog rolling down from the peaks, turning Crimson Valley into a ghost land. Appropriate, I thought grimly, for the ghost's last stand. I'd positioned myself in Nathan's ranch house with supplies for the wounded. Eleanor insisted on helping, Rebecca too. Both women armed, both determined. "We're not helpless," Eleanor had said firmly, "and we're not letting you face this alone." The Judgment Riders had taken positions on the ridge above the ranch. Nathan himself was somewhere in the fog, invisible, waiting. We heard them before we saw them. 30 horses, moving in formation through the mist. Cole Ryder had brought everyone. The attack began with gunfire, Ryder's men shooting into the fog, trying to flush Nathan out. But Nathan had turned his entire property into an elaborate trap. Tripwires, false positions, every approach channeled into kill zones. The fog became his ally, concealing him while confusing his enemies. I watched from the window as chaos erupted, men shooting at shadows, horses panicking, the Judgment Riders firing from the ridge with devastating precision. And through it all, Nathan's whisper carrying on the wind, psychological warfare, making them hear threats everywhere. "He's behind you. To your left, you're already dead." 3 of Ryder's men broke and ran. Others tried to regroup only to be caught in crossfire. Quick Draw McGrath threw down his guns and surrendered, smart enough to recognize a losing battle. But Cole Ryder pushed forward determined, Wade by his side, drunk and dangerous. Mason following reluctantly, knowing this was suicide, but unable to abandon his brothers. The battle lasted 2 hours. At the end, half of Ryder's men were dead or wounded. The other half had fled or surrendered. Cole and Mason made it to the ranch house. Wade died in the yard, shot while trying to burn down the barn. And that's when Sheriff Dawson arrived with a dozen deputies he'd called in from neighboring counties. Lawmen from Bitter Creek, from Helena, from towns across the territory. All come to see the Ryder gang finally ended. The tide had turned completely. Cole, realizing he was beaten, made a desperate run for the livery stable. Nathan followed. I heard shots, then silence. When Nathan emerged, Cole Ryder lay dead in the straw. Mason was brought to my makeshift hospital with a bullet in his shoulder, non-fatal if I could stop the bleeding. I laid him on the table, cutting away his shirt to access the wound, and froze. On his shoulder was a scar. Distinctive pattern, torch-shaped. The same scar I'd seen on Nathan's back during that first examination. A burn mark from the painted rock fire. Nathan stood in the doorway, saw the scar. His entire body went rigid. "You were there," he whispered. Not a question. A statement. Painted rock. You carried a torch. Mason's eye twitched madly. Then he laughed. Bitter, broken, desperate. "I was 19 years old," he said. "Cole told me it was justice. Said your marshal had killed our cousin in some raid. I didn't know there were children in that house. I swear I didn't know." "You knew," Nathan interrupted, his voice like death itself. "You heard them screaming." "Yes." Tears ran down Mason's face. "God help me, yes. I heard them. I heard your daughter. I heard them all, and I've heard them every night since. Every goddamn night for 8 years." Nathan's hand moved to his gun, drew it with that legendary speed, aimed at Mason's head. I stepped between them. "Nathan, no. Move, doctor." "I won't." My hands were shaking, but I held my ground. "You kill him now. You become exactly what Cole was. A murderer. Not justice. Just revenge. He killed my family. I know. And he deserves to hang for it. Legal justice. Public trial, not an execution in a ranch house. He doesn't deserve a trial. Maybe not. But you deserve to be more than the ghost." I looked at him, this broken man I'd been trying to save. "You promised Rebecca you'd try to survive, to come back. But if you kill him now, the part of you that's Nathan Hawkins dies. Only the ghost survives. Is that what you want?" The gun trembled in his hand. "I've wanted this for 8 years, he whispered. 8 years of hunting, killing, becoming a monster, All for this moment, to look the man who killed my family in the eyes and make him pay. Then let him pay. Let him hang. Let the law do what you've done outside it for too long. I placed my hand on his gun, gently pushing it down. Let the ghost rest, Nathan. Choose to be a man again. For a long, terrible moment we stood there, the gun between us, Mason bleeding on the table. The fate of Nathan's soul balanced on a knife's edge. Then, slowly, Nathan lowered the gun. "Take him to jail," he said, his voice rough with unshed tears. "Let him face trial. Let him hang legally." He holstered his weapon and walked out. I stood there, hands shaking with delayed reaction, and understood what I'd just witnessed. The ghost of Painted Rock had died, and Nathan Hawkins had chosen to live. The aftermath took days to sort through. 18 members of the Ryder gang were dead. 22 surrendered or were captured. Mason Ryder was transported to the territorial capital for trial. He would hang within 6 months. Providence Springs counted its wounds. 3 townspeople injured, none killed. Our building stood, our family safe. The victory felt almost too easy looking back. But that was because we'd had Nathan, had the Judgment Riders, had preparation and purpose. The legend grew immediately, the ghost of Painted Rock's last stand. How 1 man and 3 companions defeated an army. The stories got taller with each telling. But I knew the truth. Nathan hadn't defeated the Ryder gang with legendary powers. He'd done it with planning, preparation, and the courage to ask for help instead of fighting alone. The real miracle wasn't the battle, it was what happened after. 6 months later, on a cold December morning, I found Nathan in the church. Not Sunday, just a Tuesday. He was sitting in the back pew, alone, looking at the simple wooden cross above the altar. "Didn't expect to find you here," I said, sitting beside him. "Didn't expect to be here," he admitted. "But I've been thinking about Emma, about Sarah, about whether they'd be proud of what I've become." "And?" "I think they'd be horrified by what I did, those 2 years of hunting, the men I killed, the darkness I embraced." He paused. "But maybe they'd understand why, and maybe they'd be glad I stopped, that I chose differently with Mason." That took more courage than killing him would have. "Did it? Sometimes I think I was just too tired to keep being the ghost. Or maybe you finally remembered how to be Nathan." We sat in comfortable silence. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, the first real snow of winter, transforming Crimson Valley into something clean and white. "Rebecca asked me to Christmas dinner," Nathan said quietly. "Eleanor, too. They've apparently decided I need looking after." I smiled. "Probably right about that. I don't know how to do this, Doctor. How to be part of something. How to accept kindness. How to live with what I've done." "One day at a time," I said, "same as the rest of us. You start by showing up, by being present, by letting people see you as you are, not the ghost, but Nathan. Flawed, wounded, human. And if the nightmares don't stop, then you come see me at 3 in the morning, and we'll drink terrible coffee and talk until dawn. That's what friends do." He looked at me then, surprise clear in his eyes. "Friends? Unless you'd prefer patient and doctor, a smile, small but genuine. Friends is good." That Christmas Eve, Nathan sang in church, badly, off-key and rusty from years of silence. But he sang, and Rebecca stood beside him, their hands clasped, and Eleanor cried quiet tears of joy. And the ghost of Painted Rock became, finally and fully, Nathan Hawkins, rancher, friend, man trying to heal. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. I'm closing this journal now, 18 years after I opened it to write Nathan's story. My hands are old. Arthritis makes writing difficult, but some stories demand to be told. Nathan lived 17 more years after that Christmas. He married Rebecca in 1875. They moved to Wyoming in 1882, seeking even quieter life. He died in his sleep in 1890, age 52, Heart failure, the letter said. But I think it was simpler than that. I think Nathan had finally put down the weight he'd carried for so long, had finally forgiven himself enough to rest. Rebecca wrote that his last words were, "I'm ready," that he'd smiled, that it was peaceful. He's buried in Wyoming, on a hill overlooking a valley not unlike Crimson. Rebecca visits his grave weekly. She never remarried. Says she had her great love, and one was enough. Providence Springs thrives. We have 300 new residents, electric lights, the railroad. I've trained a young doctor to take over my practice. Dr. Webb would be proud. The judgment riders scattered after the battle. Marshal Kane died 5 years ago. The Apache Kid returned to his people. Thompson settled in Oregon. They lived out their days in peace, their vigilante past behind them. Deputy Rusty Wilson became sheriff when Dawson retired. He's a good lawman, fair and just, with the courage Nathan taught him. Eleanor passed peacefully in her sleep 3 years ago. She's buried next to Thomas, who she never stopped loving. And me? I'm an old man who kept a promise to his mentor. Dr. Webb told me never to give up on souls beyond saving. I didn't. And in saving Nathan Hawkins, I helped save an entire town. They still tell stories about the ghost of Painted Rock in saloons across the territories, about the legendary killer who couldn't be stopped, who moved like smoke and struck like lightning. But I know the truth. Nathan Hunter wasn't a legend. He was a broken man who'd lost everything, who became a monster to fight monsters, who spent 8 years hunting demons only to discover the worst demons were inside himself. And then, in a small Montana town, with the help of good people who refused to give up on him, he learned to be human again. That's the real story, not the legend, the truth. A ghost who learned to live, a killer who chose mercy, a broken man who found healing in community and purpose and love. Dr. Webb, if you're listening, wherever surgeons go when they die, I kept my promise. Nathan Hawkins was beyond saving when he arrived. At least, he thought he was. But you were right. Sometimes saving a soul matters more than saving a body. I witnessed something rarer than any legend. A man who believed he was beyond redemption, saved by a community that refused to give up on him. The ghost of Painted Rock is dead, but Nathan Hawkins lived. He loved. He healed. And that's the story worth telling. I set down my pen and look out the window of my office, the same window I watched Nathan ride past 18 years ago. Providence Springs bustles with evening activity, families heading home, children playing, life continuing in all its messy, beautiful complexity. On my desk is a photograph, taken in 1878, Nathan and Rebecca on their wedding day. He's smiling, genuinely smiling, and she's looking at him with such love it makes my old heart ache. Beside the photo is the pressed mountain columbine, faded now to almost gray, but still there. A reminder of spring, of growth, of beauty persisting even after fire. I close the journal, running my hand over the cracked leather. The story is finished. The ghost has been laid to rest. And Nathan Hawkins, friend, husband, man who learned that living takes more courage than dying, has finally found his peace. Some ghosts do haunt, others protect. And sometimes, with enough courage and community and stubborn refusal to give up, a ghost can learn to live again. That's what happened in Providence Springs in the spring of 1873. A ghost came to our town to die. Instead, he learned to live. And in doing so, he taught us all something about redemption, second chances, and the healing power of community. The legend says the ghost of Painted Rock vanished into the mountains and was never seen again. The truth is better. He found a home, found love, found peace. And isn't that the ending every ghost deserves? The end.